Welcome to another conversation with our security awareness community. We're really excited this week to host Nadine Michaelides. And Nadine, she is the CEO for Anima People, and she uses her expertise as a subject matter expert for security and crime psychologist, and she helps companies evaluate the effectiveness of their security awareness campaigns and also insider risk. And Nadine, thank you so much for joining us today. Would you please just tell us a little more about you and your background, and then we'll just go from there?
Sure. Thank you very much for having me. It's so great to be a part of this show and to speak to other security awareness people. So my background is psychology, as you said. I started out actually in the prison service in the UK, interviewing lifers, so people that have been given a life sentence for crimes that they've committed. So I was there interviewing them for psychology rehabilitation programs, and I really got interested in security and crime from there, really. I got
Mm-hmm.
involved in a lot of behavior change over the years, did a
Oh,
lot
wow.
of work with the NHS,
Mm-hmm.
Department of Health, with their digital transformations and mergers and acquisitions. So when there was a lot of change, basically bringing employees on board with that change and trying to retain talent.
Right,
So essentially, the two kind of just merged together to create this cyber psychology situation, which I think is about behavior change. It's about engaging audiences. It's about measuring that engagement, and it's
right.
about managing insider threat as well. So that's kind of the work that I'm involved in. I am at University College London. I'm a researcher there as well as CEO of Anima People. So I kind of straddle industry and academia and try and reduce that gap as much as possible, developing solutions based in science, grounded in science, based in academia, and bringing that to the shelf as quickly as possible so organizations can utilize it and really manage that human factors risk effectively.
That's fabulous. I actually just, read someone on LinkedIn last week, saying, you have the academics and then you have those who are, the practitioners, and it's not one or the other. We need both. And so you are the fusion of that. So I'm really excited to hear your insights. Today, what we're going to be focusing on more is about the security awareness and evaluating our campaigns, right? To make sure that what we're doing is actually being effective. um, and so, I love what you have on your website. It talks about awareness is more than understanding threat. It's the psychology behind how people make decisions. And it kind of made me think that, oh, maybe instead of calling it security awareness training, we should call it cyber, security decision training. you know, um, Trying to, refocus what the goal is, because like you said, at the end of the day, we want to change, we want to influence behavior for positive, more secure behaviors. um, our security awareness managers, they have a big challenge, and that is trying to affect change in many different departments with many different focuses and different types of people. So, how do you go about when you come to a company and you're going to set about evaluating? What does that look like? Where are some of the main points that you look to evaluate?
Well, when supporting organizations, first you have to kind of do an audit, a human factors audit, to try and
Right.
understand what's the current tools they're using, how are they engaging their workforce, so that you understand what the gaps are before you
Mhm.
even think about doing a strategy. Um, and then the next step would, of course, be an awareness strategy. Now, this is where people are often struggling, or perhaps they don't understand the depth or the range of approaches and channels and information sources that should be within the strategy. So that's where I help kind of broaden their thinking a little bit about that. So people think awareness is just about computer-based training and just having the right training
Right.
platform in place. And I kind of
Right.
show them that actually it's a lot more than that. And there are a lot of other factors that they need to consider as part of that. So their awareness strategy becomes more of a holistic solution, should we say, that
Mhm.
matches is the complexity of human beings, rather than assume that if we just feed them a lot of information in a variety of ways, that they will change that behavior and do everything we want them to do. That's not the case, as we all know. So it's about
Right.
engaging them in a positive way, but also identifying barriers to motivation or barriers to change, reasons why these employees might not be security conscious or adopting the behaviors that they want, the organization wants them to adopt.
Right.
So it's a multifaceted approach. It involves different kinds of research approaches, as well as simply just feeding them, spoon feeding them security training, I would say.
Right. Right. What are some of the barriers that you find that people don't always recognize, right? Companies might miss when they're first kind of stuck in thinking it's just, it's just training the platform and shoving, like you said, putting it into their minds. But what are some of the barriers that you encounter or that you see companies encounter that kind of becomes an aha moment for them?
Well, the first one would be the training solution. So
Hmm.
sometimes they're not particularly engaging. Sometimes they're not
Right.
particularly relevant to that group of people, that audience. So perhaps if they're developed in the US and it's a UK based company, it might not fit that well.
Right.
Um, and there's little cultural factors. I mean, it can be even as simple as that the backgrounds in the training don't really match their own background. So they're disconnected from the training. It doesn't mean anything to them. So therefore, it becomes a
Right.
tick box exercise. They lose their audience from the first moment often. So,
Hmm.
so that training becomes a tick box exercise for the benefit of the security managers more than the actual employee. So that's the first thing that I noticed a lot. I mean, it's fantastic that they're doing security training. I mean, there's a lot of companies that are not even doing any security training, so one shouldn't be too critical. But it's important that the training is considered quite carefully as to whether it matches their audience.
Right.
So yeah, so I would say fundamentally that's the first thing. But the second thing is sort of like technical barriers, so encryption tools or sort of things that security professionals put in place because they want to control their technical environment, and actually it's a barrier to business. It means that those
Mm.
employees have to do workarounds in order
Right.
to fulfill their own KPIs and roles and responsibilities. So that's yeah, it's no point giving them a lot of security training if actually that they have to do workarounds in order to complete their tasks.
Right.
And the third thing is a really disengaged workforce in the sense of there's a lack of loyalty, commitment, trust. There's
Mm.
moral disengagement. I mean, I do a lot of research in the area of psychological contract breach. I won't go too much into the academic side of it, but basically, when you've got employees that are not particularly motivated psychologically to fulfill any tasks that the employer
Mm.
wants them to, particularly if it's tasks that sit outside of their contract or their job description, if you like security might do. It's kind of often it's asking people to go above the call of duty to do things that they might not have time for, or they might not want to do, or they really might not care enough to
Right.
do it. Yeah, that's the problem.
Well, yeah, that's a big challenge. That's
There's a
that
big
that's not an easy one.
Yeah, there's a big assumption that if we give people enough information in a variety of ways, then they will want to do it. And the reality is quite different. The reality is it doesn't matter how great that strategy is, how great that CBT, that training is.
Right.
If we have a disengaged workforce, then they're not going to do it anyway. Why should they?
Right. Right. There's a bigger issue there too within the culture of the company if the workforce overall feels that way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's
Yeah.
not easy. So when you're creating so you're coming in to evaluate and you're looking at these different points. Um are there particular, and not to give away all your secrets, but are there particular generalities that companies can also look at a manager, so maybe they're considering the culture, is it relevant, right? Is their training relevant? And they're looking at kind of their workforce, overall, and their culture of their company. Um, but are there some specifics that you always like, you always go to make sure you check that they could maybe consider when they're looking at their program as a whole and trying to determine, what KPIs to kind of measure?
Yeah, I mean, there's a long list of KPIs to measure. It would take me hours to go through it on this call, but basically, thinking about it from both a qualitative and quantitative approach. So,
Mhm.
appreciating that workforce is a combination of individuals, and they're all different, and they'll have different needs. So, your solution needs to respect that. So when you're doing a strategy, bearing in mind you've got neurodivergent people, you've got people that perhaps don't have very high literacy, you've got people that engage better through video, other people through text. Some people need
Right.
to download as well as upload. You've got so many different types of people. So respecting that is really important. But understanding that requires an element of investigation. So you can't just guess that. You need to know that. So therefore, it's
Mm,
a good idea to survey your workforce, interview your workforce to get a feeling for what are the issues, what are the barriers to motivation, psychological, technical processes that may not be in place. And then you can apply that strategy much more effectively, rather than just a tick box exercise. Because awareness, I mean, the term awareness is brilliant because it's put human factors on the radar when it comes to very technical professionals, CISOs, etc. So it's great that it's become part of the language, but awareness is not the point. The point is behavior change, and
mm,
having the motivation to want to change one's behavior. And it's really
right.
important to recognize that awareness does not mean behavior change. I'm very aware that I shouldn't eat chocolates. I really shouldn't. I need to lose a couple of kilos. I should not be eating chocolate, and I'm very aware of
Mm.
that. I've been aware
Not
of that my
alone, yes.
whole life. But if someone puts it in front of me, I'm going to eat it. If it's one of my favorite ones, I'm going to eat it. So
Right,
it's thinking it through. What can we do to support that individual to encourage them not to eat it? Can we replace it with something more healthy that's equally satisfying? Or can we
right,
perhaps not put it right in front of them and tempt them? So it's just, yeah, thinking about it in terms of it's not just awareness, it's supporting
right.
individuals throughout that journey. And it can be as simple as including a reporting mechanism, or it can be as simple as training the manager um, to understand how to ask the right questions, or to
Mm,
identify if there's been issues within their teams, stuff happening at home, which could translate to issues within their working day in terms of insider threat.
right.
So the way to do that is, as I said, having a mixed methods approach, which is, I know it's an academic term, but basically do surveys, include KPIs such as not just what do they feel about security. That's a
Mhm.
pretty crappy question, to be honest. I think it's absolutely pointless. I mean, why should anyone
Yeah,
feel anything about security? And how you feel about security at home is very different to how you feel about it at work. So
right.
avoid those kind of really pointless questions, and think about it more in terms of what do I need to know in order to get this individual to understand the importance of security and to change their behavior? What are the questions I
Right.
need to ask? And what am I going to do with that intelligence once I've got it?
Mm, right. It's, you said it's academic, but really as marketers, we use the same approach of, taking a piece of content and creating different versions of it, right? We can take a long form piece that goes really in depth and we'll create like just a quick video summary, that's 30 seconds long. And then another one that is a PDF, an infographic, who loves infographics, great, they can look at that and go through it before other people infographics are overwhelming and I don't want to look at it, and then but for another, it's just a bullet point, and so it's taking that information and just communicating in different ways so that you increase the chances of those different varieties of people and their learning habits, to be able to hopefully catch that message through one of those, varieties of pieces. So,
Brilliant. And those
it,
positive messages are so important. I mean, that's another thing we found a lot from a research perspective, that anything that's kind of fear inducing is
mm,
counterproductive, because all it does is attract the attention of those that are risk averse anyway, and they're not the ones that are non-conducive in terms of security behavior.
right,
And it can be paralysis as well. It can actually stop people from reporting or doing anything about security. So really keeping those messages very positive and engaging is important.
right,
But we also have to be quite honest with ourselves, and know that whilst we trust our employees, we want to support them, engage them, there are situations when people don't necessarily have the organization's best interest at heart. And it doesn't matter
right,
how much awareness and positive measuring and messaging that we do, that situation is not going to change.
right,
So I think also having insider threat program or surveys or training managers to identify that there's possible risk is really important, and isn't traditionally part of awareness, but should be. I mean, it's all about culture at the end of the day, and understanding the workforce and trying to get them to be as security conscious as possible. So bear that in mind.
right. No, I think it's really great connecting the two together. A lot of times I see, just insider threat is its own separate, vertical within security, and I don't think I've ever heard it being taught more as a, combining the two. I'm not saying it hasn't, but I just, that's a perspective I haven't quite heard, but it makes a lot of sense, because like you said, at the end of the day, it's that culture really, because again you're going back, stepping back further, saying the people, right, and we're trying to in be aware of the people and help the people to be aware, but then we want them to take these positive changes, but like you said, the managers have to be aware of these behaviors, right, so that they can catch, oh, this might not look so great, this we might need to check into this more, what's going on with this individual or situation, um, because that's the whole point of insider risk is you didn't expect anybody to to behave, maliciously, whether intentionally or not, so yeah, it's a difficult balance. I think one of our I think I told you this before, but one of our security professionals in our weekly meetups that mentioned, well, his company didn't want him to do anything on insider risk uh, awareness month because they didn't want their employees to feel like that they didn't trust them. And, like that was
I
the
think,
message the
yeah,
company took when they heard the term insider risk. And
yeah.
that was what they thought would be projected out. And so I think there's a lot of training that needs to go into that, education of what insider risk really is and how it can, benefit.
I think the
Um,
thing is, insider risk is, I suppose it sounds negative, which is my problem with the term, but it is what it
mm,
is. Because any tools that we use, for example, identify the future security champions as well, the promoters as well as the detractors. So we compare our tools to Net
mm,
Promoter Score just because it's a similar kind of assessment. And so, yeah, understanding who are your future promoters, that your security champions that are going to be the ones that help you raise awareness, are really important, as well as identifying those that are potential issues throughout their career.
right.
And I think there's
Oh,
not
that's
a
yeah.
lot of work being done, other than what we're doing in this area. There are security champion programs, but they're
Hmm.
volunteer based, and I think it would be quite
Right.
useful to understand right from the recruitment and selection stage, who are the people that are really going to help us here and bringing that
Uh,
message to employees about the importance of security culture. But
I
culture
think
is
that's a really great view.
yeah, culture is. I'm a little bit critical of the word culture. I use it myself because it's a great word, But what's important, just a little bit of advice when we try to measure culture.
Hmm.
Be sure you understand what you mean by culture, because the definition of culture changes from different schools of thought, and different
Mm.
organizations see it very differently. So, the first thing, before you try and measure your security culture, you really need to pin down what is that security culture mean. Otherwise, those KPIs are just meaningless. That's why I prefer to use risk, because everyone understands what risk is, and it's much easier to define and measure, essentially.
Well, I think that's a really great insight. I know when I first reached out to you talking about, trying to discuss a topic, I had brought up security culture, and you're like, oh, let's not talk on security culture so much. That's a tricky one to nail down. But I think that's a really excellent point to bring out. It's more about, risk and identifying what that is, and it's clearer. It's more clear, to be able to pinpoint so that you can measure and you can evaluate. So when you evaluate, you know, what what um, we talked a little bit about, kind of some of the things to consider when you evaluate and some of the KPIs, so how do you take that and then present that to a company, right, that's hired you? And I'm meaning this like to also expand it into for a manager who's they've evaluated it, right, and they've got their KPIs, and now how do they communicate to the company? These are the benefits. These are the, this is what we found, and this is where we want to take it.
It kind of depends on the level of investigation or the type of exploration that they've used, and what kind of data
Hmm.
is the output.
Sure.
But visual is my best advice. Keep it as visual as possible. So, and if you're trying to communicate information to technical teams, then it's definitely better to use dashboards, graphs, visualizations, statistics, than it is a load of, a document that's 55 pages long with a load of text in it. Is
Right.
just my feeling. And I understand why. I mean, that's most of us. We're all really, really busy. We need key information. That's why KPIs are so great, because we can very quickly identify what we need to know from a few key statistics. So
Mhm.
keep it short. But as I said, if you've been doing lots of interviews with different employees around the business, then the data that comes out of that is going to be very different to if you're doing a survey. But again, you can get the themes from that data. You can squash it down to 5 bullet points and
Right.
then communicate that. And the measures that you'll need to take following that exploration is going to be very different depending on what the tool is that you've used, what the questions are that you've been asking, and what people have been saying, essentially.
I think it I think that's really like very good. Just to kind of get that idea and that feeling of what is being understood, but it always goes back to the data, right? You can take any data and interpret it a million ways. Maybe correctly, maybe not correctly, but understanding how that data can be used. But what about I just completely blank.
Oh, don't worry. Yeah, we all do that. I was just
Sorry.
imagining myself at the board meetings when I was working around this change management in the NHS, and I used to waffle on for half an hour about what I thought should happen and how the employees were feeling based on the surveys that I'd done, and they just were not interested at all. I just felt it was such a waste of time. So I very quickly learned that I needed to have 4 or 5 bullet points and a few key statistics that I just presented every single meeting, and then they
Mm,
understood that there was progress or lack of progress, and
right.
that prompted action, rather than me just telling them what I thought we should be doing.
Right. I think that's a really great insight. It's getting those key metrics, the consistency, right? Because they know what to expect now. So they get a feel for knowing which way they want it to trend. I think that's a really great insight. I know what I was going to ask now. It was if there were any tools, for someone that is out there available as like a template for if they're looking to do a survey themselves, um, or something that you might recommend that they could use to kind of guide if they're not familiar really how to get started, because maybe evaluating people's psychology behind their behavior is not their strong point. If there's something that you recommend, and or if there's something that you offer, like I don't know, that you offer as well.
Yeah. So in terms of, I mean, the information is there in journals, academic journals and publications.
Mm,
So what's been tried and tested, and some of these academic journals have surveys attached to them, if you like. So they include what questions they've asked. The problem
Maybe
with
we
that,
could get a copy of that and include those in our recap, perhaps, if there's any
what
that you find useful.
well, I mean, what I was going to say was there are
Mm,
thousands of them. So you have to decide which ones you want to use and what's most
right, I
appropriate.
remember that.
So, I mean, if an organization has a security and awareness manager, then perhaps they have the time to do that, as well as the data analysis, as well as create the visualizations and provide those key statistics. But if they don't, then they would need to outsource, and that's when we come in and go,
Mhm,
hi, we can help, because we take away that time and have that
right.
scientific approach. So so yeah, I mean, we also have on our website some free tools around campaign. There's a couple of white papers on there, and we're putting some more
Okay,
on there soon. So by all
great.
means, have a look at that. There's process flows, there's models, frameworks. There's a lot of
Fabulous.
in the blog as well, from more of a sort of like
Mhm,
strategic point of view, what you can do and what you should consider as part of that. But yeah, our company is very much about managing counterproductive behavior and engaging audiences. So that's the services that we offer. And we have a platform that we use to do data analysis and provide a
mhm,
dashboard so that people get risk scores, heat maps, all that kind of nice stuff that's very visual and colorful. And so as much of that you can do, I think really helps to translate thinking to action, if you know what I mean, and getting it on the agenda
right.
of leadership teams that need to put money into something and have it on their agenda, basically.
Right. Fabulous. Well, I'll definitely link some of that then, because I know a lot of our security awareness people still, but it's not their full-time role, right? People are just being
Right.
handed the hat suddenly and going, "Oh, good, I get
Yeah.
to do this too." So
Yeah.
I know that's definitely a great service, and I know those tools will be also useful to them. So I know we're coming right up on our time, and I just want to, I like to always kind of end with like, maybe what's one thing that you would recommend for someone who's kind of just starting to think about, their security awareness program and how to improve it and how to, and looking at it in terms of evaluating it? What would be the one main tip that you would want them to consider when they're looking to evaluate their own programs?
Challenge the lingo. So
Mm,
awareness, culture, behavior. We haven't really talked about that, but there are a lot of behavioral measurement tools out there. And challenge that thinking. What do they mean by behavior? What are we actually measuring
mm,
here? Are we preventing counterproductive behavior? Or are we just monitoring it after it's happened, which is not ideal? What we need to do is prevent it from happening in the first
right,
place. Culture, great word. What does it mean? How can we measure it? Do we all agree that that's what it means? Do we all agree that we're measuring it? um, Awareness. Do we just want to inform people with a load of information, or do we want to involve them and do we want to
mm,
inspire them to become security champions?
right,
So really challenge the lingo that's used and the material that's out there. And you're all smart individuals, so just be logical about it. Would I want to watch this? Would I want to do this? Would I give a crap? If the answer
yeah.
is no, you're wasting your time.
Yeah, definitely. We
Mm.
have one question come in. What advice would you give to someone that would like to approach awareness training to the executive team? Currently, they only have phishing campaigns. So I guess they're wanting to help expand that.
Um, so they want to sell the idea to the chief exec or whoever about
That's how
having
I
it.
understand.
Yeah, I mean, phishing campaigns are a little bit challenging in creating a security culture, because I think most of us know that they're not necessarily positive or give the right impression of the security teams. So training offers, if it's good training, it's more positive content. It's engaging people with what, informing people, hopefully, inspiring them as well would be nice.
Right.
So, I mean, you would look to, I suppose, the NIST framework or ISO 2701. And you would say, look, we need
Mhm.
to do this as part of our requirements. I would, of course, go a step beyond just security training, and want to include a lot more around human risk, identifying promoters and detractors, etc. But yeah, I would come back to the ISO 2700, so that this is a requirement. We need to do this. Get some key
Right.
statistics about what happens if you don't have these in place. The average, get the average cost of a breach, the
Yeah.
average incidents, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely lean on those just regulations and put it outside of yourself.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
it shouldn't be a nice to have, it should be a requirement to do training. However,
right.
it's gotta be engaging training, otherwise it's a waste of money and a waste of time.
Right. Those are great points. Well, Nadine, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your taking the time and sharing some of your insights. I know we can't really go too deep on anything, but hopefully this has given some of our community, just a place to start thinking about this in a different light and challenging those definitions of terminologies to help improve their own programs. And please feel free to reach out to Nadine. She's active on LinkedIn, and also you can go to her website, Anima People, and we will have a write up as well, where we'll be posting some of those tools that she mentioned earlier. And just a reminder that we also have weekly meetups for virtually for the security awareness community. So you can please reach out to me if you'd like to join that. We'd love to have you, just to help the people to crowdsource, ideas, brainstorm, troubleshoot, and support you as we can. So thank you so much for your time, and have a great day.
Thank you.